All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Another NBA season and another underwhelming playoff performance by the Los Angeles Clippers. The Clippers were sent home in the first round of the playoffs for the second consecutive year as postseason mediocrity continues to plague them. And I know that some of you are going to listen to this and say, hey, well, we're talking about the Clippers. They're still the Clippers. I get it. Okay. I'm saying from the standpoint, you think about the money and the resources that Steve Ballmer has committed to this team. And of course, they're not living up to that part of it. I mean, at the end of the day, he's tried to change the culture and he's still trying to change the culture around this team as he's looking to bring that first NBA championship to this franchise. But you look at this club, injuries, injuries, and more injuries for LA as they didn't have the services of Kawhi Leonard here in this series with the Dallas Mavericks. And of course, you think about Kawhi Leonard, tremendous basketball talent, but in the 5 years that he's been in Los Angeles, he's only appeared in 229 games for the Clippers. The overall fiasco that continues to be the Kawhi Paul George era of Clippers basketball. We saw, the Clippers bring in Kawhi after he helped the Raptors win that championship in 2019. Of course, we saw them make the trade to bring in Paul George because that's who Kawhi wanted to play with. We've seen the talent around these two, but of course, it's one of those where if Kawhi's healthy, Paul George is hurt. If Paul George is, healthy, Kawhi's hurt. And it's one of those where you need your best players to be available all the time. I look back to last year where, we saw the Clippers make the playoffs. They lost in round number one to the Suns primarily because of the injuries. We saw Kawhi not be available, at the start of that series. And then, of course, they won game one against Phoenix, and then Paul George got hurt. And, it's kind of like the same old song for the Clippers. It's like, yeah, but, at the end of the day, you don't win championships on paper. You win them with what you do on the basketball court. And it's very tough to win said championship when your best players ain't available. Again, like I said before, it's one of those where, Steve Ballmer really hasn't gotten his money's worth for this team. And you have to wonder if it's time for Balmer and the Clippers to change their approach. Remember, you go back when they made that trade with Oklahoma City for Paul George. There's regardless of the sport, there's always a scenario where you know what, you don't think about the picks that you give up sometimes. You don't think about the young players that you give up sometimes. And most people, glossed over the fact, oh, Shea Gilgis Alexander, he was a part of the trade with LA and Oklahoma City. And now you look at what SGA is doing for OKC. And I'm just hypothetically speaking here, but you wonder if the Clips had to do it all over again, would they have parted with him? I'm not sure. But getting back to it, as far as whether or not that it's time for the Clippers to try to pivot from their plan. I think they definitely should, but they are not, okay? Because you look at Ty Lue. Ty Lue is about to get paid. Why? Because his name, whether it's true or not, that the rumor mill is out there, that he's been linked to a possible candidate for the Los Angeles Lakers to replace Darvin Ham, who was just fired. Okay, with that said, Ty Lue knows that he's going to be a hot commodity. So what happens? You're gonna get a new contract from the Clippers, and more than likely, you're gonna get more than your value just due to the fact that you are wanted by somebody else. So you look at James Harden, 34 years of age. He just, he's play he excuse me. He's entering, free agency once again, and it's a scenario where James Harden's going to look to get paid. Is anybody going to want to pay a 34-year-old James Harden? That remains to be seen. But would the Clippers want to bring him back? You look at the fact that Paul George is probably going to get a contract extension from the Clippers. Like James Harden, he's 34 years of age. It's one of those where, in my opinion, if the Clippers do give Paul George that extension, they're going to pay him, in my opinion, because you feel like, and well, not really feel like, but you look at it, and in my opinion, they really have not gotten their money's worth, if you ask me, since they got Paul George. Okay, so these are big time questions that have to be answered. They're stuck with Kawhi Leonard's contract for the next couple of years, and I say stuck because unfortunately he cannot stay healthy. But I don't see Steve Ballmer making too much of a change to this team. Why? Because Steve Ballmer wants stars. On top of that, he's set to take his team into their new arena as he's looking to, I'm not going to say escape the shadow of the Lakers. They played in the same arena now for about a quarter century, but nonetheless, LA is always going to be a Lakers town. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But he's still trying to like escape, at least being in the same arena with them. Of course, I know that the Clippers are on the bottom of the scheduling poll there with the Lakers and Kings. At the Crypto Arena. I almost said Staples Center, but nonetheless, it's one of those where okay, you go into your own home. You don't have to worry about covering up somebody else's retired numbers, somebody else's championship banners. You can make it about your team, and nonetheless, he wants to establish that culture, but he also wants the stars to do it. And of course, he's paid the stars, but the stars have been unable to stay healthy, and of course, not deliver in the postseason when he needs them. So I look at it like this: in my opinion, what should be done, I think it's time for them to pivot because we've seen enough of this. We've seen, you put so much stock in your stars and they haven't been able to get you to the finish line. I think the Clippers should do a little pivot and try to get younger. Okay, go back to the drawing board. Try to focus on drafting. Try to focus on developing talent, but they're not going to do that because it's one of those where at the end of the day, we've kind of seen this movie before. We know what's going to happen. They're going to play well together as far as the veterans on this team. They're going to give you hope. And then eventually somebody's going to get hurt, or multiple people are going to get hurt. And of course, that hope not only is out the window, it's on I-5 heading out of town. Okay. So we've seen the same narrative from the Clippers. You look at them in this series with the Dallas Mavericks. Okay, it looked promising to begin. They started off with that 109-97 win. Then credit to the Mavericks and Jason Kidd, they made the necessary adjustments. They won game 2 in LA 96-93. And for me, I held out hope for the Clippers after game 4 because they started off strong in that contest. We saw Dallas come back furiously to tie the game up in the second half, late in the second half. But Paul George and Kawhi, and excuse me, not Kawhi, but James Harden stepped up to hold off that Mavericks rally in order to tie the series at 2 games apiece. And I figured, you know what, you're going back home for Game 5 now. You've got some momentum. Try to build off of that. And what we saw in Game 5 from the Clippers at home was flat out embarrassing as they lost by 30 points on their home floor to these Dallas Mavericks. The Mavericks kept their foot on the gas to their credit. And when it was all said and done, they were able to finish off these Clippers in 6 games. Like I said before, things have to change for the Clippers, but unfortunately, I don't think enough things are going to change. So, in my opinion, this time around next year, we're probably saying the same thing. Whereas, you know what? The Clippers showed flashes when they were healthy. Somebody or somebodies got hurt, and it's going to be yet another early postseason exit for this high priced team. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank all of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you haven't already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.